Good afternoon to you. I'm Danilo Evangelista, and welcome to today's tropical weather outlook for July 26, 2026. Today, we're going to take a look at what is happening in the tropics, especially in the Pacific, where we have two active hurricanes right now. One of them is a major hurricane, and it continues to rapidly intensify. So, quite a bit on our dock today to talk about, at least in the Pacific, and of course, we will go over the tropical activity that is happening in the Atlantic as well. In fact, let's start off by taking a look at the National Hurricane Center Tropical Weather Bulletin to see, first off, what is happening in the Atlantic Basin. Nothing much over the next 7 days. Things are once again slipping into a slumber here after we had Tropical Storm Bertha this past week in the Gulf, and it looks like nothing is going to follow up for the foreseeable future. But in the Pacific, as I mentioned, things are really starting to come to life right now. And they have been coming to life for the past few weeks, but it looks like things in the last several days have really, stepped up by a dial. And we now have two hurricanes we are tracking in the Pacific. Hurricane Fausto, which is at 85 miles per hour right now, with a minimum pressure of 977 millibars. And Fausto is continuing to move on off to the west-northwest here. It is weakening now. After it became a Category 2 hurricane a few days ago. But we still need to watch Fausto as this moves on off to the west-northwest here and might still potentially bring some impacts to Hawaii. Although, as I'll show you with the model guidance in a little bit, this looks more than likely like it'll stay to the north, and we will not see a direct impact to the island chain as of right now. But there is also another hurricane here, Hurricane Genevieve, which is a major hurricane, the first major hurricane of the season for the Eastern Pacific. Maximum sustained winds are at 120 miles per hour with a minimum pressure of 963 millibars, and Genevieve is rapidly intensifying right now and improving in satellite appearance by the hour. In fact, let's take a look at the satellite loop right now to show you how things are looking like in the Pacific, and you can see in the Eastern Pacific right now, the main star of the show is Hurricane Genevieve. Quite a photogenic looking storm, and I'll show you a zoom up close shot of Genevieve in a little bit, but off the top you could already see well-developed eye, also a pretty circular CDO as well, with outflow stretching well away from the storm, and definitely probably one of the biggest signs of a rapidly intensifying hurricane is very well pronounced outflow channels, which allows a hurricane to breathe outward and to ventilate properly, which helps feed rapid intensification. And then looking at the Central Pacific here, you can see Hurricane Fausto, which is continuing to move on off to the west-northwest, looking a little bit disheveled right now in its appearance as it is weakening, although it's still trying to hold on, and it's probably going to hold on to hurricane strength for a little bit more time. And of course, we're going to have to watch and see whether or not we will get impacts here to the Hawaiian Islands, especially the northern part of the islands. And I'll show you the track for Fausto in a little bit. But in general, throughout the Pacific, besides those two storms, you could still see quite a bit of convective activity in general, kind of surrounding the two storms here with Genevieve, and then especially here in the Central Pacific, quite a bit of convective activity. Just an overall sign that the atmosphere is very favorable. We have lots of rising motion in the atmosphere, and it's all happening thanks to the general background state caused by El Nino. And you can see we have another area here in the Central Pacific, and this is actually just about to cross the international date line into the Western Pacific. And this is Invest 92C, which is actually on the National Hurricane Center bulletin here, although it's probably about to get off the bulletin here as it's going to cross the Western Pacific. But it's at a 90% chance of development right now, and 92C here, if we go to the Central Pacific shot, is very likely to move into the Western Pacific and more than likely develop into another powerful, long-tracked typhoon here, which will probably be one big ace maker. So very, very soon, likely looking at 3 hurricane strength storms in the Pacific here, and probably 2 major hurricane strength storms with Genevieve and probably soon to be, typhoon here from 92C. So things are definitely very, very active right now. And we expected it. We expected things to be this active in the Pacific, and all the predictions of the Pacific being very active this season definitely looking like they will come. They are coming to fruition. And really quickly going to Hurricane Fausto right now. Here's a look at the cone of uncertainty, and you can see Fausto generally expected to continue off into a west-northwest path, and it is expected to weaken here, but there still probably will be some impacts to Hawaii. The northwesternmost island here, not necessarily sure what it's called, but I have to look back on a map and kind of brush up on my geography of Hawaii a little bit here, but maybe one of the northwesternmost islands here of the chain might still get direct impacts, and even some of the other islands as well could still get impacts from tropical storm force winds, and potentially some rainfall from Fausto as it passes to the north. And portions of the northwestern islands here are still in the cone of uncertainty, but generally Fausto is more than likely going to remain to the north of the island, and we won't see any direct impacts to the main island, which is obviously a good thing. And taking a look at the forecast track here, overlaid on top of the sea surface temperatures, so you can kind of take a look at all the guidance and see what they show track-wise, and compare it to what the actual sea surface temperatures are. You could see, first of all, why Fausto is probably not going to intensify. In fact, it's going to weaken here over the next few days. It's generally treading the line right now of borderline warm, barely warm enough sea surface temperatures for intensification, and that's because of its northerly path. And I guess if it stayed on a more southerly path, maybe it would have actually, probably maintained for a little bit longer and been a bigger issue to Hawaii. But it's going to stay to the north and probably weaken on its way through. So looking less likely that Fausto is going to be a major threat to Hawaii at this time. And in general, with these Hawaii threats, for some reason, they really are hard to get. Many times if we had situations like Hurricane Fausto, where long range, it looks like the models were, hinting at a storm, tracking directly towards the island. And then most of the time when it gets closer in time, the models end up shifting north if in its track, or the storm ends up completely dying out and fizzling away before it's able to get to the island chain. It's just really hard to get storms to actually impact the island directly. They've happened before, and we've had, very infamous cases of storms that have impacted Hawaii, including Hurricane Iniki from 1992, which was really active in the Pacific that year. And I think we also had Hurricane Walaka as well, and we even had Hurricane Lane, which threatened the island, but of course fell apart due to conditions not being very favorable. So it's very hard to get impacts to Hawaii directly by tropical storms, which is a good thing, and it looks like Hurricane Fausto is going to fall victim to that, I guess, stereotype or whatever. And I guess it's a good thing, because Hawaii, once again, will more than likely not deal with any major impacts except for maybe a few gusty winds and rain showers from Fausto here, as it will more than likely be passing to the north as a weakening storm. So that's all we have on Fausto. Now we talk about Genevieve, which is a intensifying hurricane here in the eastern Pacific. And here's the closer shot view that I wanted to show you on Genevieve. And just it's an absolutely incredible shot. This is from the mesoscale floater from GOES 19, and really just highlights, the beauty of hurricanes. Hurricanes are devastating and scary, natural disasters, but there is some beauty to it, as always, with Mother Nature. It's so interesting how sometimes Mother Nature can be such devastating, yet so beautiful at the same time. And look at me getting a little bit poetic there. But Genevieve right now, once again, it's a major hurricane, and you can clearly see as to why it is a major hurricane. We have a well-defined eye appearing on visible satellite, and it looks pretty circular too, and it also has a pretty nice well-rounded CDO surrounding it. And as I mentioned before, incredible outflow channels on all quadrants of the storm. There's no shear impeding Genevieve right now. No shear that might cause it to kind of hold in intensity and not able to intensify further, or maybe trigger an eye wall replacement cycle or dry air or anything like that. And the sky is the limit with Genevieve from now for at least the next few days or so. The only thing that'll probably impede this from reaching high-end Category 4, maybe even Category 5 intensity, is itself, and that would probably be in the form of eye wall replacement cycles, which, aside from what I just mentioned with when it comes to shear, you know, it can happen at random times, so you never know what'll happen here. But as of right now, Genevieve, a beautiful looking storm, and very likely will continue to intensify, and it probably is still rapidly intensifying at this time. And it's going to maintain major hurricane intensity at least for the next few days here, according to the National Hurricane Center. Probably going to reach its peak tomorrow or maybe early Tuesday. And it's probably going to remain a major hurricane well on through Wednesday, and eventually weaken as we get towards the day 4 and 5 time frame, as it'll move into cooler waters here to the northwest naturally in the eastern Pacific. But for now, speaking of sea surface temperatures, I just want to show you it is in a bath of warm water here. Right now situated in at least 30 degrees Celsius in terms of sea surface temperatures, and we have 30 and even 31 degrees Celsius kind of widespread here throughout the eastern Pacific, and even throughout most of its track, to the northwest. It's still going to be in sea surface temperatures anywhere from 28 to 30 degrees Celsius. So absolutely perfect conditions for rapid intensification. And again, the only thing that'll really be stopping it from, reaching potentially, high-end hurricane status. Not sure if we're going to get like an upper-end Category 5, but potentially maybe a high-end Category 4 or Category 5, not out of the question, is, whether or not it does an eye wall replacement cycle and kind of choke itself off a little bit. But everything is systems to go here for Genevieve to continue rapidly intensifying and definitely becoming our first proper intense storm of the Eastern Pacific hurricane season. So let's take a look at what the model shows here, especially the hurricane model for the HAFs. And I'm mainly doing this to show you how strong of a storm it shows, because usually the HAFs A model and the hurricane models in general, especially the new hurricane models, have a really good grip on rapid intensification with these hurricanes. And that's a good thing, because these hurricane models are designed to pick up on stuff like rapid intensification and such. Let's take it out here over the next day or so and see what it does with Genevieve. And you can see continues to intensify it, roughly reaches a peak of around 948, 949 millibars, and wind-wise it gets to just about Category 4 intensity. Does actually hit Category 4 intensity here probably late tomorrow. And then as we get towards Tuesday and Wednesday, I guess as it moves on off to the west-northwest, it eventually begins to weaken here. And then I guess it is, below hurricane intensity by the time we get to Thursday. But I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up going a little bit over than what the HAFs model has. They bring this up to, let's see, just barely Category 4 intensity, and I guess a pressure of 948 millibars. So we should definitely expect more intensification of Genevieve from here on out. But I personally wouldn't be surprised if we see a storm stronger than what the hurricane model's show. And especially when you look at this satellite picture here, you definitely would assume so. But we'll see what happens. Regardless, though, Hurricane Genevieve is going to be a very strong hurricane here, and probably continue to intensify, and in the very least reach Category 4 intensity. But luckily, as I showed you the cone here before, I should mention this though, no general direct impacts to land expected with Genevieve right now. Those along the Mexican coastline don't need to worry about this storm causing any headaches, other than, of course, maybe high rip current risks and high waves, which obviously that in and of itself is an impact. But in terms of, direct tropical storm or hurricane impacts to any land right now, not expecting it from Genevieve, which is obviously a good thing. Moving on to the Atlantic right now. Since we covered the Pacific, taking a look at the tropics in the Atlantic, and things are we are slipping into a slumber here after we had Bertha earlier on in the week, which was a interesting tropical storm, I should say. It tried to surprise us, and it did surprise us. It surprised quite a few people by the mere fact that it developed alone. But it obviously was kind of a sloppy storm since it had to deal with wind shear, and probably, stunted it from, potentially reaching a stronger intensity than what it could have been, but it still brought impacts here to the Gulf Coast. But beyond that, any other, threats of trouble in the tropics for at least the next week, not really looking likely. We do have some pieces of energy out here in the Eastern Atlantic, and definitely, probably some more aggressive looking waves now, which is a little bit interesting. I guess climatology is starting to favor the Atlantic more as we get closer towards the end of July and start progressing towards August. So naturally, you would see that, thermodynamics in the Atlantic are going to start becoming more favorable, even in the face of El Nino this year. So definitely starting to see a little bit more convection here in the Eastern Atlantic, and looks like we have a few tropical waves moving off the coast of Africa right now. And speaking of that, let's take a look at what our tropical waves are looking like. And looks like there's one, as I just mentioned here, there's probably one moving off the coast of Africa right now, one that's in the central western portion of the MDR, and there are a few throughout the Caribbean here, and there's also one in the Eastern Pacific as well that is following right behind Genevieve. But in terms of any of them being expected to develop right now, again, as I showed you the National Hurricane Center bulletin at the beginning, no development expected in the Atlantic for the next 7 days, and taking a look at the GFS here for the next 7 days as well to kind of confirm whether or not that will be the case. You can see here, taking it out to hour 168, no major development expected here in the Atlantic. You don't see vorticity consolidating, and you don't see any sort of low pressures tightening and forming. So no sign of tropical development right now on the model. So at least over the next week here, as we close out the month of July and prepare to enter August, the Atlantic looks like it will remain quiet, except for maybe some front here off the East Coast, which there are some small pockets of energy here, which, try to consolidate a little bit, but don't really seem to. Nothing solid is appearing on the models right now. So the Atlantic, right now, nothing much is expected, and it looks like it's going to stay that way for the foreseeable future. The Pacific, though, on the other hand, let's run through the Pacific real quick. And you can see here, Fausto moving on off to the west, that moves into the Central Pacific, and obviously will move just to the north of Hawaii. Genevieve here, once again, will probably continue to intensify over the next few days, and will eventually move on off to the northwest, and then eventually off to the west. And as we get towards the end of next week, it's more than likely going to die out and not be much of a concern to the tropics. I mean, it's not really much of a concern to anybody, as once again, it will stay well away from Mexico here and not be, again, really any threat here to anybody in the tropics. And then beyond that, as we get towards early August here, we're going to have to watch and see whether or not something will follow up. And we will get more development in the Eastern Pacific. I'm sure something will probably appear, and I guess the GFS here, take it out to 10 days. Looks like something does appear closer to Mexico. Obviously, we will see, though, whether or not that is right. We will obviously be watching the tropics here very closely over the next few weeks, seeing if any other signals pop up in the Pacific, but I'm pretty sure they will, given that this year is so far shaping up to be a very active hurricane season, and we all know the reason why. That is, of course, El Nino. But really quickly want to move on to the Western Pacific here, because going back to Invest 92C, which is in the Central Pacific right now, about to cross over, I really quickly want to show you what that's going to do. Not that it has any impact on the tropics to us, although maybe it might bring impacts to somebody down the line, but I just want to show you Just the amount of activity that we're seeing here unfold in the Pacific right now. Taking it out over the next week, here's the Western Pacific. First of all, right now in time, you could see the piece of energy here associated with Invest 92C right near the date line, and it's probably going to cross over by tomorrow, and then eventually it intensifies pretty quickly here, and throughout the week, you just have 92C, which really blows up in intensity and size as well, and you can see what happens here on the GFS. Once again, more than likely looking at another very, very long-tracked and powerful typhoon here in the Western Pacific. The hurricane models are definitely very aggressive on Invest 92C, to say the least, especially if you look at the HAFS model, and I'll probably post that to Twitter later on today. But at least over the next week, looks like 92C is more than likely going to stay well out to sea here in the Pacific. And I guess that's one of the positive things about the Western Pacific Basin is that it's a very large basin, so that more often than not, we can get these very long-track, powerful, mega super typhoons that are upper end 190 miles per hour. Yet, for the most part, they can usually miss a lot of land, since the Western Pacific is this very big, vast basin. Although there are still quite a few land masses, including Japan and China, which just got done dealing with a typhoon a day or two ago as it made landfall. I think it made landfall yesterday, but it looks like 92C here will more than likely stay out to sea, except for maybe once we approach 10 days, its remnants could get caught up in northern Japan or Russia, but for the most part, it's going to very likely be a out to sea, but powerful and monstrous typhoon, as we typically see, especially in a year like this in the Western Pacific. And again, it just goes to show the pattern that we have this year, once again, all thanks to El Nino. And we're probably going to continue to see activity like this as well in the Pacific for the next few weeks, and probably all the way up until the very end of the year, especially in the Western Pacific, and obviously the Eastern Pacific as well. Probably going to see a handful more of strong storms as we continue on in this hurricane season. With that being said, though, that's going to wrap it up for today's discussion. Hope you enjoyed what you saw today. If you did, and you want more videos like this, as I always say, every single video, I would really appreciate if you like, comment, and especially subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you can get videos the moment I upload them. I do apologize. I do real briefly want to mention this because I know especially more of my loyal viewers out there noticed that I did not do a live stream this past week, especially. I typically do weekly live streams on Saturday. I apologize for that. My schedule kind of didn't allow me to do a live stream yesterday, but I promise you, weekly live streams will be coming back starting next weekend on Saturday. And of course, we will continue to do these daily tropical weather updates throughout, the entire week and the next following weeks to come. With the exception of maybe taking a day or two off here and there, and you'll notice that from time to time. But again, continuing these daily tropical updates, and of course, we will once again resume our weekly updates next week. And next week probably will happen on Sunday, as it will be August 1st. And typically, when we get to August, I do live specials with more hurricane predictions. To kind of mark the midway point of the hurricane season. So I'll announce a little bit more about that this upcoming week on my social media. But live streams are back. Just kind of had to take a little bit of a break yesterday. But we are back, and we will continue to do these tropical weather updates for you. And of course, they will continue until the hurricane season is over. So I hope you guys all stay tuned for that. And of course, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe. Peace, love, and kindness to you all. I'll be back with more this week, starting tomorrow.